Would you like to make a fabric bow for any gift that you give year-round? Well, this is a tutorial and I'm going to show you how to make this really cute fabric gift bow that you can use any time of year and use up your scraps, use up maybe leftover fabric from the edge of your quilts after you've had them long armed and they send you that fabric back. And that's what I actually have used mine for. So here's what the bow looks like. It's super cute. I actually love to be able to give gifts year round. And so this is actually my Seam Sew Me alphabet jumbo clips that I've wrapped up here and put a cute fabric bow on it. And I actually love to use tomato twine to be able to give when I give my gifts as far as quilts and I put a bow on them. I usually use this twine and even for small things. So let's get started and I'm going to show you how to make this super cute fabric gift bow. Let's talk about the supplies that you will need to make the fabric star gift bow. So first off, you're going to need the template that I created for you. So in the description box below, you can click the link for the fabric star gift bow template and you'll download this and print it out. And then you're going to take some cardstock, or if you have some cardboard, something that's thicker. First, you're going to cut this out from the paper, and then you're going to take that star that you've cut out from the paper and lay it on a piece of cardstock. And then you're going to trace it into the star, and then you're going to cut that star out and you will be left with this, which is your template, and it's thicker. And the reason for that is because when we're going to be wrapping fabric around this, it needs to be sturdy to hold that fabric as you wrap it. It won't work if you just use this piece of paper and cut this out. So cut this out, trace it to thick cardstock, and then cut it out as a template. So you will need that. You're also going to need fabric. And you could sew a bunch of scraps together, little bitty scraps maybe if you wanted. That would be a little bit more time consuming. So for me, I have this leftover fabric that was cut off from the edge of a quilt. So this was my backing for a quilt. And my long armor always sends me back the leftover yardage. So you can see here, this is a really long piece. It's doubled over of fabric. And so I'm actually going to use this. Now we're going to be cutting 2 1-inch strips that are 1 by 36 inches. So 2 1 by 36 inch strips, and we're going to be sewing those together. But before we do that, you also are going to need heat and bond fusible interfacing. Now I have this in the bolt, but you may have another brand or have it in a package. What we're going to be doing is we're going to actually fuse the interfacing onto the back of this fabric first before we cut, because we're going to have long strips. So basically the length of this cutting mat is 36 inches. That's why I picked 36 inches, because that's the length of the cutting mat. And then we're going to do 2 of those, sew them together. And then your long strip is going to be like 1 by about 72 inches when you sew those together. And that's what we're going to be using to make the bow. So get your heat and bond, your interfacing, get your fabric. And I'm actually going to go ahead and interface all of this so that I can go ahead and cut all of my strips to have extras on hand for when I'm ready to make a bow. I make these bows year round, and they're wonderful to use like leftover fabric like you have from the leftover quilts possibly, or you could even do it scrappy if you wanted with some of your scraps. But I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do this whole fabric here, and then I'll have my strips handy to make lots of bows. They'll be ready to go, you know, throughout the year for me. I can just whip one up pretty quickly. So those are the supplies that you'll need. And after you get all of that ready and you get your template ready to go, then I will show you next up how to iron your interfacing onto your fabric, especially if you're a beginner with using interfacing. Okay, so I'm at my pressing station now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron a little bit of this interfacing on at a time, since my interfacing is on a bolt and I don't really want to waste some of this extra interfacing. So this is the bumpy side up, this is the sticky side, and then this is the wrong side of my fabric. Now you don't want to get your iron on the bumpy side because it will gunk it up. Now I've been doing this for a while, so I'm not afraid to do this, but if it's your first time, you may actually want to cut you're interfacing exactly the width and the length of your fabric if you're worried about getting it on your own. For me, I'm just going to be extra careful and press it as I go. So turn your heat off. Make sure you follow the directions on your interfacing that you're using to be able to iron this on there. And it's usually, about 10 seconds to a spot, but I'm kind of impatient, so I end up moving mine around quite a bit. But I'm just going to go all along here and be careful not to get the interfacing on my iron. And I'm just ironing this down. I have it where it's on a pretty hot setting. And again, that glue is just sticking to the fabric here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slowly, after I get this interfacing glued here, I'm going to unroll more of my fabric this direction. And then I'm also going to unroll the bolt of interfacing. And I'm going to keep using this to interface this entire piece of fabric, like I mentioned, so that I can have several strips to make more than just the bow that I'm going to show you how to make for the purpose of this demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll go back to the cutting table and we will cut our strips. Okay, so I have ironed on interfacing to this big piece of fabric here, so you can see that is ironed on there, and I have doubled it over since it's so large to be able to cut. Now, I wanted to tell you, I don't know if you have one of these, but basically it's like pinking shears for a rotary cutter. Can you see the blade here? Like it's curved, just like your pinking shears would be. I actually went ahead and cut one strip. I had this this idea while I was filming this. So I was like, I'm going to do one with this rotary cutter. So you actually could have little curved edges for your strip if you want. So I did go ahead and cut one with that. It was a little bit harder just because I've got this doubled up, 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. So it was a little bit harder to cut through. This is the only blade I have, and I think it was slightly dull. But anyway, I did do one. So I just wanted to give you that little tip. If you want to get a basically kind of a pinking shear is what it's like, blade for your rotary cutter. And these are Havel's rotary cutters. I'll link it for you. They don't have these blades. This is a blade, another blade from a different company. And I don't even remember who it's from, but you could probably research it. But the rotary cutters are my favorite because once you press this down to your fabric, this moves to release the blade, and then it automatically goes back in its home so that your blade is not exposed and you don't accidentally cut yourself. Almost every tutorial I do, you're going to hear me talk about why I love this because of safety. So this is the Havel's sewing rotary cutter. It comes in 2 different sizes. You can lock it if you want, but this prevents accidents. So anyway, little tip on that. So I've cut one of the strips here on this one, and actually I cut this one 1.5 inches thick, so that was a bit of an experiment. I just thought I'd share that with you. Okay, so now actually let's get back into the tutorial. So you've got your template here. Now if you are new to sewing or you've really not done a lot of template stuff, the best thing to do is you're going to cut this out first. So once you cut this out, pretend that this is this piece that you've cut out. You're going to lay it on top of cardstock or cardboard, and then you can use a pen. I've got a Sharpie that's got like a really fine tip on it. And then, so that I don't use up this whole piece here, you will easily be able to trace that star because there is a lip on the end of this cardstock to keep your pen from kind of flipping over onto the other side. So if you actually tried to do this with the piece of paper that you print out, it's going to be a lot harder to do. Not to mention, you won't be able to, whoops, I moved it. You won't be able to wrap your fabric around this because that's actually what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using this, and since it's on cardstock or cardboard, it's going to be a lot harder of a piece of paper to where it's not going to bend on you whenever we are kind of weaving the fabric around this. So you'll trace that there, and then you're going to get your not fabric scissors, and you're gonna cut this out here, and then I would just label it. So you could write on there, you know, 5-inch star, and you could laminate it if you wanted. You could even laminate this to keep using it and kind of have it always to be able to make more. So just a little tip there on that. So cut that out. And then I have doubled mine over, but depending on what fabric you choose to use, you might have done kind of strip pieces that you've made yours where it's gonna be scrappy. That would be super fun. I'm gonna go ahead and cut that edge off since I used kind of the pinking shear blade. I'll cut that off so that I have a really smooth edge here to start with. And I've got in a brand new blade, so it cuts really well, especially because this fabric is thicker. So you're gonna wanna cut 1 inch. So I'll turn my ruler around here. And this one is 1 inch. And this is gonna be really long. But you're gonna cut basically 2 strips that are 36 inches long. Now, because I'm using fabric that is really, really long, I've already got, when I unfold this and I put it on my cutting mat, this is actually 2 strips that are about 43 inches long. So I'm gonna have to cut this one down a little bit, but you can double this over if you've got like leftover yardage from your binding or something. So I'm not gonna have to sew 2 pieces together, but you may, depending on the size of fabric you use, are gonna wanna cut 2 36-inch pieces and sew those 2 together just kind of like you would your binding, so that you have 1 strip that is 72 inches long. Okay, so that's what you're gonna need here. So out of that fabric, I actually had enough to make 10 of these 1-inch strips, if you don't count the 1.5-inch experiment I did with the pinking blade rotary cutter. So you see, I've got all of these that are ready to go throughout the year to go on gifts whenever I gift quilts. Then you've got the bows to be able to put on those, or, you know, any other type of occasion you want to use fabric for. So again, it's a great way to use up maybe the end of the edges of a quilt that you've quilted when you've got, you know, that leftover, you know, 4 inches or whatever it may be that your long armor gives you back, or that you may have left over that you want to use. Or again, use your scraps. So these are all ready to use in the future. And I'm going to set all of these aside, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to use our template and make the fabric bow. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to just overlap this a little bit. This is going to be the center of your bow when we're all done weaving it around the template. And it's a little tricky. You have to kind of slide this under and keep this back to keep this from getting caught under your needle there. You could hand stitch this if you want. I don't have the time for it. So I'm just gonna kind of slowly pull this back, and you can use a stiletto if you want to keep that out of the way. And then I'm gonna back stitch about halfway, and then I'm gonna flip it around and finish the stitch on the other side. There's just a little bit left there. I probably could have made it work, but it's just a little tricky there to kind of get that underneath the presser foot and not accidentally sew over the top part. So we'll sew that shut. Now remember, this is not going to show right here, this part that we've sewn together. This is going to be the center of the bow, so no worries there. The other thing I want to mention, that interfacing is really helpful because it helps with fraying that can happen, and also it makes it a little bit more stable so that it's not floppy. So that is how you'll make your centerpiece, which again, this is 1 inch by 4 inch. Now it's time to start making our fabric bow. Now, full disclaimer, this takes some concentration in the beginning. I have a little bit of dyslexia, so it took me probably a little bit longer than maybe the normal person to get my rhythm and remember how to continue to make the same movement around this template. So you may have to try this a couple of times. You may have to watch this part of the video a couple times. It took me a little while to get it, and I have to still really think about it. So the first thing you're gonna do, it helps if I put the ribbon to the left of me, And you're gonna take the end like this and you're gonna create a kind of a loop. And basically it reminds me of an awareness ribbon. We used to make these just like only this for Child Abuse Prevention Month, but you're gonna do it just like this, where you have kind of a little bit of a hole at the top, and this is how we're gonna get started. So you're gonna get your template here, and you're gonna stick your star point up through it like this, okay? And then you're gonna flip it over, and you're gonna use your thumb always to keep this in place. And it always needs to be that when we loop these through, that you're always crossing in the center. And also the other thing to keep in mind is whenever we do this, you're always going to be wrapping around the bottom left star point, okay? Right down here, the bottom left, not this side of the star point, but this side here. So it's actually the right side of the left star point, all right? So it's really kind of the diagonal here. So that's really key to remember that. And we're always going to be turning this template to where you're always wrapping on the right side of the left star point right here, okay? Otherwise, you can lose track if you're talking to someone or whatever. You can lose track and actually wrap too many times around one star point if you're not careful. So you've got it here like this. You're going to go around the bottom star point on the left and slightly turn that. You'll wrap it around like this, okay? And you're crossing in the middle right there. All right, you're crossing in the middle. So you know you've done it right. You've looped it around. You can see what it looks like on the back. Looks the same as your other one here, but you're gonna keep it facing this way, all right? Now, you're gonna turn it at this point. After you come across the middle, you're gonna turn it clockwise to where you're back down here at the left star point, the right side of the left star point, and you're gonna loop it around again. I have to kind of turn it sideways just a little bit to get back to the center again, okay? So I'm back to the center. I'm going diagonal across up to this top right star point, okay? The left side of the top right star point. So you take it there, and we're gonna turn it again, okay? Before we wrap it, we're gonna turn it again, and you're gonna wrap it around the bottom left star point through the center, okay? Now we get to the center, we turn it again, where we're back down here to our left star point, wrap it around the right side of the left star point, keep my thumb there, we've wrapped it, pulling it across the middle, diagonally over to the right star point, and then we're going to turn it again. So we're always making sure that we're only wrapping the bottom left star point, okay, from right to left. If you don't turn it like this, it's easy to accidentally wrap too many times around one star point. So this is really key. It took me quite a while to get used to this. So again, bottom left star point, the right side of it, loop it around. Loop it around. You might have to kind of move your hand out of the way. Hold it there in the center. We end up across the center, and we're up here again at the top right star point, but the left side of it, okay? And then we turn it. Turn it again, where you always are starting down here at the left star point. And I kind of have to move my thumb up a little bit. You're going to wrap it around, up through the middle, and you land up here again at the right star point. So I'll let you keep watching me. We're going to turn it. I'm starting down here at the left star point, wrapping it around, crossing in the middle, and end up here at your top right star point. Turn your template, wrap it around the bottom left star point, come across, hold it in the center. You're ending up here at the top right star point. Turn it. And again, always wrapping down here at this left one. So that's really important, or otherwise you will totally lose track. I'm having to really think about it as we do this tutorial. Also, again, little dyslexic, so I'm gonna turn it bottom left, up through the center. I'm holding it with my thumb. Up at the right, I'm turning it back down so that I'm always down here at this left star point. And always remember to do the twist. Once you get to the middle, that's where I remember to do the twist, okay? When I'm here at the middle again. I see, oh, I'm up here at the right star point. Do the twist. Twist. Wrap around. I'm back to the middle again, and let's see if we can do one more like this, and we can. So this will allow you to do it, and you end up with the tail right here in the middle of the back of the star point, or the back of the star. And then look, you can see what's going to happen here soon. That's what your front looks like. So we've gone over each side here. It looks like about 3 times approximately, okay? So you might have to stop here and try this a couple times. Don't get frustrated, because it took me a little bit as I practiced this in looking at a real bow. Like I say, a real bow, the ones that you can get in the store, when you unwrap it and take it apart, that's how you can see how this was constructed, is whenever I took one of those apart, okay? All right, so that's what yours should look like. Now we're gonna flip this whole thing over like this, but we're keeping our finger back here to keep everything in place. We got a tight grip on it. We're gonna keep it like this. Now we're gonna slowly pull out the template, 1 star point at a time. Make sure you hold this tight or you'll lose all your hard work. So we're gonna take that out, we're gonna twist it, take that out, twist it. And this is why you might wanna laminate this. If you use too thick of a cardboard, this can be a little hard. So that's why I like cardstock. And pull that out like this. Pull it out like this. Again, never letting go of the back. And just be real careful. I just kind of put my finger here and I'm holding the back as I pull that out. Now this is where it's helpful. It took me a little bit to kind of figure out how to keep this down. And I decided it worked best on my wool cutting mat. So I'm gonna get a pen here and pin this down all together through the middle so that it does not come undone when we do the next part here, okay? And you might even wanna do 2 pins just to make sure, okay? Now we have all of these little loops in here to pull out. And you can use your fingernails, you can use tweezers. So now you're gonna wanna pull out each of the loops here. So you're just gonna gently go through and pull those out. See if that one had another one. I think there's one that only does it, you go around the loop twice, but it's approximately 3 times. This one's got 3. So we're gonna pull those apart. And this is why it can help to use tweezers, especially like if you've got fingernails, you'll just pull those little loops out. And you see, if you don't pin this, see, I got that backwards. If you don't pin this down, then you can see how all of this could come unraveled. So just go through and pull those out. So that first one, there's the second one there. And then down here at this one, we've got 3. So we'll pull this one out first. And that one, you see, it's looking like a bow. Isn't that pretty? Let me zoom in for you so you can see that there. So there we go. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Ta-da! We're getting closer to getting done. Isn't that pretty there? Yeah, so there's 3 on each side, and this one here on this side just has the 2, but you can't, you know, you can't really tell. Isn't that nice? Okay, so now remember this little piece right here. This is what's going to go in the center, okay? Now, what I like to do is I like to get a needle and thread. You could do this at your sewing machine. You could take this off and put it under the sewing machine and just go back and forth. This is back and forth to keep this in place if you want. I'm actually going to take the needle off and lift it up very gently. Make sure you're holding it from the back and from the front. And take your needle and just go through that a couple of times. I've got a knot at the end of this one. I'm going to come back up here through that again. Just go down a couple of times. And again, I've done this at the machine when I make them. It just depends on if you want to do that or not. Just make sure you don't let go. And make sure when you're coming up with the needle that you're coming up through the center and that you're securing all of those layers so that your hard work doesn't come out or doesn't come undone, okay? So I'm gonna do one more here, and then I'll tie it off in the back. And I'm gonna go to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna stitch it down really good with a sewing machine. You don't have to, but just for those of you that are like, yeah, I don't wanna use a needle and thread, and you just wanna go straight to your sewing machine and do that, I'm gonna show you how to do that, even though this is actually good. Okay, so we'll go over to the sewing machine, and I'll show you how you can do this without using needle and thread if you want. Okay, I have this over here at my sewing machine. Now, again, I've stitched through there to kind of keep it all together, but there have been times where I actually are like, I don't want to mess with having to hand stitch that, and I'll just do it at the sewing machine. But I will give you a fair warning, and that is if you kind of lose control of the bow and you haven't done a few stitches like that, ask me how I know, it can all come unraveled and you've got to wrap it again. So just be careful. So I'll just kind of maneuver it underneath there like this. Get it there so you can see. Just put my, and I will just stitch over all of that and then back stitch like this. And then you've got that held down there in the center really nicely. Now, this is pretty thick, so depending on, what kind of machine you have, if it's maybe not a machine that can sew through a lot of layers, it might be a little harder for you. But I do like to do that because there's nothing worse than here you've spent all that time doing this, and you have to start over if you kind of lose your grip on it. But that is a great way to secure that. Home stretch, we're almost done. So remember that centerpiece that we made? Remember I said you're not going to see that stitch there? So now you kind of have to figure out where in your bow you want that centerpiece to be. So you've got 2 options of how to secure this. You can do it with a needle and thread. It's a little bit harder because you've got a lot of thick fabric here, but if you've got a thimble, you can do that. For me, I end up doing it underneath my machine. You have to kind of maneuver it a little bit to do that, but you figure out kind of where you want your bow, which direction you want that centerpiece there. I think I'll probably do it like this. You can take your needle and thread, and you could go through 1 time if you want, maybe 2 times to keep it all in place. But like I said, it is kind of thick, so pushing this through there can be a little hard. Sometimes I have to use my teeth to get that needle through like that to secure that in place. I've tied a knot at the end of the string, the end of the thread there, and then I'll pull it back up through here. But I find this really cumbersome to do because it's so thick. But I wanted to show you that you can. So I'm just going to yank this through because I don't love to do it that way, but you do what works for you. I actually just take the whole thing, tuck it underneath my presser foot, and be careful with your fingers, but I'll just kind of hold this back here, just to hold this top part like this back, like that. And I have a knee lift, so I can control my presser foot with my knee lift. And I actually just start sewing. And I just move this top part right here out of the way, like that. And I'll back stitch. And then I'm just gonna turn it around. And I'm gonna sew the other side down of that loop. So again, secure that down, back stitch, and there you go. So now you have sewn that middle down, and you just kind of fluff it a little bit, fluff your bow like that. Pull those all those around because you've kind of smashed it down a little bit. Cut any loose strings that you have. And ta-da, you have yourself a fabric bow. There you go, quilty friends. There is your fabric gift bow. Isn't that cute? It's got so much more character than the kind that you buy at the store that are just out of, plastic or what have you, but that's how you do it. So I hope you will enjoy making these year-round for quilty gifts that you give others or any kind of gifts that you give others. And if you like this tutorial, please subscribe. There's a button for you on the side of this video. Give it a like so that you see more of these videos and so other people see them as well. I'm Belle from Seam Sew Me, and until next time, quilty friends, make lovely things.